is, isn't it? Cooking. Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Bensted, and at the beginning of COVID lockdown, I started doing Zoom-based theory training. So I'd always done it in the car, or more likely at McDonald's. Free Wi-Fi and mediocre coffee, and gone through it. And I thought I was really good at it. I spent the time doing it. I worked my way through. Since specialising, I've figured out I was scratching the surface. So I'm going to try and share some of the areas where I've realised that I was going wrong, and other people might be as well, and just try and take you through. If you get questions, shout. It's far more a chat. This is just so I don't lose track, and as people will tell you, I have a habit of going off in an odd direction. So my question is, the industry approach to the theory, how can you revise what you haven't learnt? So we often go in and it's all about the DVSA questions and about repetition of those, which are now not the questions on the test, but we haven't really changed that. And when instructors come into the industry, part one's tackled in the same way of, go away and do your theory and then get your part two done, and then we'll start teaching you to be an instructor. But the important information that's in it is what you need, is part of the training. So, that for me, that's one of the biggest issues. I always say the theory's the poor second cousin of the practical test. Pupils feel that way, instructors feel that way, and I think the DVSA do to some extent. I've got an email which I'm yet to respond to that says that as long as people have read all of the literature, they will understand what's behind the question. I haven't replied because it's going to be a very long reply, and that was talking about part one and the L test. It's shocking. I won't swear because we're live on Facebook. But it's absolutely shocking. And the opportunity is a really untapped resource for driving instructors. I'm being paid £30 an hour to sit on Zoom without the car expenses. As a business tool, it's something to look at as well. And I support driving instructors doing it, so I'm happy to share resources and help. Reasons people fail from the people I'm speaking to, and my average client coming through has failed from 8 to 12 times already. The most is 23, and she's still not there yet. And the problem is we haven't got a culture of paying for theory training, so people tend to say, no, I'll go and try harder. They don't know how to study, they lack the resources, they don't put the effort in. They've got a gap in their knowledge and a lack of understanding, which is one of the two biggest reasons. And then poor comprehension. I'm not going to criticise how the questions are written because we've only got a short amount of time, but so often it's the words that they don't understand. And then having additional needs, making sure that those are being supported. People don't realise that those options are there. If anyone wants to take a picture or make a note of this, but just go to the DITC website and do a search, it'll be there. All of these resources and the codes connected to them will be available there. Plus this presentation, I'll pop on there as well. So if you've forgotten something, you can go back to it. So the official sources used for the theory test are the Highway Code, Essential Skills, Know Your Traffic Signs, and the DVSA Revision Data Bank. The ones that resources I recommend people use. For instructors, I like Theory Test Pro. You have also got Driving Test Success anytime, but what that allows you to do is to see the question by questions that they're doing. When you're doing it on Zoom, you can literally go through it with them. And you can have multiple accounts on there so that you're making the most of the AI. Where people go wrong with apps is they use apps that haven't got artificial intelligence, so you end up working a lot harder. What the good apps will do is identify what you're getting right and what you're getting wrong, ask you what you're getting wrong, and say happy to advise on any of those. I've been lucky enough to consult on the James May Theory app. I have some iOS and Android codes if you want to get a free copy, or you can just go to the James May Theory Test website and you can sign up through that to get one as an ADI or PDI. So you can get a copy so you can give it a go. I think it's a really good resource, but you can't work with it yet as an instructor. It's very much self-study. The Safe Driving for Life website, I will admit I slated when it first came out. And I still would if I was only looking at the front end of it. As the DITC, we are consulting on that alongside NASP. And the stuff behind the paywall, really good. There's learning involved, there's questions involved. So, definitely worth a look. There's not at the moment a cheap way for you to see with the good stuff. We're working on that and they are going to do so. So, make sure you keep an eye on the information we put out because we'll shout about it when it happens. And theory test practice, Annie's here today. There's going to be a link on here when it's on the website, so you'll be able to get through to her stuff as well. But love Annie's stuff. I do her one-to-ones for her because she doesn't like doing those because she has no time because she's everywhere, always on TikTok. But TikTok's free resource, so well worth having a look. Diane is on there as well, but we're not talking about her because she's my competition today. And then 5-minute theory podcast from Terry Cook. Again, the podcast is free, so we do a lot of work with Terry. And then me, I work via referrals from instructors. So if you don't want to do it, quite happy to do so. I work with the individual, so it depends on what they need, but I try to then involve the instructor, and if I do publish anything, it tends not to be now, it's via Zoom, I include the instructor's branding on it as well. So I don't charge anything for that. Just want to help people, really. So just a quick run through the additional accommodations, but always happy to chat about this if you've got someone specific. VoiceOver is available to everybody, but be aware the voice changes as it goes through, and that can be really confusing to some people. It's different to the one on the apps as well. So on the apps, you tend to click play and it plays the question and all the answers, whereas the DVSA one, you click the question and the answers separately to get them played back, which is better because you can play them individually. So just being aware of that. You can get extra time, you can get a separate room. You can get a reader recorder or an OLM, but you have to have the paperwork to qualify for it. The OLM is not easy to get, and at the moment there's a huge waiting list for all of this. But they are able to change the wording, and we'll have a look at how important wording is in a moment. So they're not allowed to change technical wording, but the situational wording they can change. They've got diagrams. Why we can't have them on the screen for everyone, I don't know. That's something that I'm, discussing, which is a professional word for fighting over. However, and Gary's in the room, so I'm glad to put it on there. Really good resources from disability driving instructors for the SEN provisions. Why they call them additional accommodations, I don't know. It's number 2. Tell them to push number 2 when they phone up. So there's one thing that nobody seems to be teaching, driving instructors are missing on practical lessons, which is causing a lot of issues when it comes to them going through the theory. Any ideas from anyone what it might be? Sorry? So I think that does happen. Yeah, that is missed sometimes, that we don't necessarily join the dots. Definitely. This is something that is incredibly simple. Hi, guys. Something incredibly simple that you can start with to help them, work things out. Anyone else want to hazard a guess? Otherwise, I'll carry on. We drive on the left. So out of everyone that I've taught on the theory, nobody has been taught that the rule is we drive on the left. So I was going to do this really clever thing and hand someone who's right-handed a left-handed pair of scissors. Anyone can cut with these. They work. I've bought the only ambidextrous pair of scissors. Just didn't work. But if you've ever watched a left-handed person trying to use right-handed scissors, if we don't know that we drive on the left and that we overtake on the right, and those are the rules, and that we drive clockwise, which isn't just roundabouts. Think about going into a petrol station. On the right, you go in at the top and out at the bottom. I was working with a PDI truck driver the other day, and he said 40 years on the road, he's never realised that everything's clockwise. It hasn't occurred to him. He's just done it. And that's the problem with pupils, is they don't necessarily see it as a rule. And when it comes to the theory, it's very much teach the rule and then teach the exceptions. I think we should do that out with the practical as well. Roundabouts are a great example. There's more exceptions than rules, but we tend to start with the rule. So making sure that that rule is covered from the bare bones, it then helps with so many of the questions. And out of everyone that I've worked with, not one person said that they'd been taught it and understood that it was that important. So it is, it's like laying out the cutlery at the table. It's got to be around the right way, not like my, ambidextrous but largely left-handed other half. I just lay it out differently to wind her up. And then what you find from the majority of people that fail, I think, is that failed by 1 mark thing, which isn't by 1 mark, it's by 8, which is 16%, which if you're going to say it's I failed by 1, I'm going to say you failed by 20%. And that is so misleading that people just keep trying, which is where my lady who has failed 23 times is saying, but I'm only failing by 1, maybe 2. And it's not, it's such a big thing. But each question's worth 2% and it's just misleading. My 11-year-old got about 30 out of 50 without necessarily knowing anything. And it's not because he's got a driving instructor dad, because a couple of weeks ago he said to me, what are those flashing amber lights on the side of the cars? And he's 11. It's a almost working by common sense approach. And that actually means it's a bit of a hidden risk when it comes to the theory. So comprehension and understanding are the 2 things that I work on the most. Words like junction. The number of times that people they're using it, but they don't know what it means. So I go back to when I was at school, normally an English lesson, reading something out, we come across a new word. Who knows what that word means? And I'd sit there nodding, much like you keep doing. And they'd then point at me, and I'd go, no, I can't tell you what it means. I just know. And that difference between kind of a feeling of roughly how it sits and actually understanding what that definition is really important. So again, from an in-car approach, making sure that every word you come across, what is a junction, get a definition for it. If they're doing the theory, work through and get those, a glossary of definitions so that it's actually established. Dual carriageway, I don't think I've had a single pupil that's actually been able to define what it is and why it's there. As a phrase, what the differences are. So I think we often assume things. We use the word and we label it and we think that's enough, but having that definition is really important. And that tends to be where things go. It's not the knowledge that they're lacking. It's the understanding of the comprehension. You then throw in, dyslexia or autism. Some of my autistic pupils give me the best answers, and they're never wrong. They're just not what the DVSA are looking for. Their logic is impeccable. I'll come to one of those in a minute. Words that come up under the comprehension. Douse. Anyone used douse in the last 10 years as a word except for involving the theory? Gradient. Why can't we call it a hill, please? Say dual carriageway, mandatory. Junction actually is surprisingly common as an issue. Prohibitory. Central reservation is a really odd one because we then say that the central reservation is the one on the right, which doesn't necessarily make sense to people, and that throws them. So when you've got that mix of words, oil versus fuel, one that I always missed, that people don't realise the difference. So that's something else that I've started to make sure I cover when that comes along. Contraflow, just so frustrating. I don't know how many times I've explained it to the same people. It's got the word, almost, of arrow, A-R-O-W in there, which sometimes can help them remember that it's the one with the arrow on it, once I've pointed that out. Not hugely dyslexia friendly for some dyslexics, but others love it because their brains instantly see arrow. So that can sometimes help. But knowing what it is, and it doesn't help, there's 2 types of contraflow when it comes to the theory. They're very defined as being, the bus contraflow and the motorway roadwork version. And then anything that includes reduce, increase, minimum, maximum is challenging. And we have to remember that these questions are on there in words. There are pictures creeping in now. They're starting to do a few of those. I challenge everybody to have a go at the theory test without looking at the screen and just do it from an audio, whether it be someone reading it to you or using the recorded one. Because that makes it so much more difficult to hold that in your head and work things through. And then the understanding of the subject, the signs and breaking them down or building them up, depending which way you want to look at it, the lines, the roads, all of those different factors, just to make it simpler. Because once you've got those really good building blocks, and I'm a massive Lego fan, if you can get those, then you can piece together so much. But they're lacking those foundations, and that's what I'm finding with so many. So my hotel room had this sign in it because it's a bed. It looks like a bed. It's only that we've been told that that is a car. It also looks a bit like a Muppet with sunglasses on, but it's only once someone has pointed out to you that it's a car that you then see it's a car. It's a bit like the hidden arrow on your way home. Check it out on the FedEx lorries if you see one. There's an arrow hidden in there. You don't see it until you see it, and then you can't get rid of it. So we've been trained that this is a car, but that is not a car. It's a black shape. So if that's a bed, what the hell's that?
That's a spare.
So we see that, and that gets in our way sometimes. Sometimes we've got to see it their way and actually not assume that it's obvious and not assume that it makes sense. And you will now, everyone you've seen that sign, see it as a bed. And when you see the elderly people sign, it'll be the old lady pickpocket who is stealing the money off of her husband. So one of the things I start with outside of the rules, and we'll have a look at some of those rules, is the signs. People tend to go straight to, this is the sign, if I go back to one. This is the sign, this is what it means. But actually, forcing them to start with the shape and work it out logically every time is really important. So shape, colour, then picture. Because, that's why this is here. Has anyone played Guess Who? No? You need to, it's awesome. But you get given a person, and the other person has to guess which person you've got. So you've got a set of people on there. What's the first question you ask in Guess Who? Yeah, because you've halved the number that are there. You don't go with have they got a beard, because that's going to limit a few. So you go with your man or woman, and then you work from there, and that's what that does. It limits it down. And what it also does is it gives you the opposite to look for. If you know that you're looking for a circle, and you know the other ones are all triangles, you've got rid of those as well. So that elimination approach works really well, but people tend to go straight for it. There's a real driving instructor thing. I don't know about people in the room, but that it's a triangle, not an arrow. It's also an arrow, and it's pointing, and it's saying up ahead. Anyone who's seen Annie on TikTok, she's always sat there doing this, turning it into a W for warning. But it is also an arrow pointing ahead, because warnings are ahead of us. So don't fight the fact it's an arrow, embrace it. And then this one took me 14 years of doing the job. The give way, which is, I'm going to go with it's a point down triangle. I think it's an upside down triangle because I worked in retail and trying to stack them on the shelf was a nightmare. But it's got 4 of them in it. And it's taken me 14 years to notice that they're there. So as a way to remember it, you've got them. We're ignoring the A before anyone points it out. I accept it's there, but it's outnumbered. Not happening. But yeah, just as ways to remember things, it really helps. And I'm getting really good at seeing things in a different way, but that one's taken me a while to figure out. So I'm glad it's not just me. So having a look at the questions and the structure of the questions, this is not one of the DVSA's questions, you'll notice, because it's very well written. And we're going to start with, they're here, but they're not here, so it's fine. What do you need to wear? Anyone want to answer the question? Okay, Glasses? Sorry? Footwear, lovely. These are such driving instructor answers, aren't they? Yeah? Because we know it's about driving. And we know what driving is, and we've got that really well defined. Appropriate clothing? Yeah. Which is not necessarily driving, but is a driving instructor thing. I did have someone turn up for a lesson in a bikini once, because she'd forgotten a lesson, said, can you pick me up? And she'd been sunbathing on the local green. So very much a driving instructor answer. You'll like it in a second. So what we do know is the theory test is a multiple choice set of questions, which I don't know if I like or don't, but it would make it a lot harder otherwise because it could be anything. So we get our multiple choice. There's your glasses. But it could be any of them. Putting it into a driving context, possibly it's narrowed the field. But we've then got these little sentences that they put in there, and DVSA are really tight on these questions. They won't give anything away for free. If it's in the question, it's important. So I say look for the full stops. So that full stop is really important. It defines the question. It's information that wouldn't be there otherwise. So, it is snowing. What do you need to wear? Anybody fancy one of those? Going for the bikini. I knew. I thought it was going to be Gary saying it, but I knew. So we'll say possibly not the bikini. We'll get rid of that as well, but we'll get rid of the shorts. So we're going between the woolly hat and the glasses. Now, when I do this with a learner, woolly hat because it's snowing. They don't think driving context. They don't think this is what I'm doing. All of them go for the woolly hat. And they often move away from the glasses, which is really interesting. So then we get the other defining question. You are short-sighted, and we know it's about driving, so we get rid of the woolly hat. So that elimination works really well. Understanding the question and the structure works really well, and that solves more than going through doing subjects with people. It really helps them figure out whatever that question's going to be, because we've got the difficulty, especially on the part one, because I do part one theory as well. On the part one, I'm convinced the questions that are being asked aren't in the revision literature. That they're not all in there, and people are finding them much more difficult. Looking for full stops is one of my rules. Magic words, safe, careful. If that's in there, it's probably, not always, going to be the right answer. You do you. It's a test for you and whether you are safe. So if it's about telling people or inviting people or allowing other people to do things, it's probably not the right answer. And go for the safest answer, because that's normally the best bet. So that set of rules really helps. It works on their understanding because they start to figure out what the questions are about, and it limits the number of options that they're having to choose from. Traffic lights, in case anyone couldn't figure it out. What's the one in the gap?
Filter lights.
Sorry?
Filter?
No, not in this one. Red and amber?
Flashing amber.
Flashing amber, could be. So we've got an exception. So when we teach it, so often we go in with pedestrian crossings and we go in with an exception because the flashing amber is the exception. It's all the others. So that's the answer that I always get when I ask for the sequence of traffic lights. Every time, without fail. And this includes people who've been driving trucks for 40 years, which I find very scary. They're not wrong. And it took me a while to figure this one out. The red light is already on. So which one comes next is the amber light. So I think when we tell people that they're wrong, it's not necessarily true. It's that they're not saying it the way that they need to say it for the test. But I've got a solution. We've got our red, green, amber and red. The issue was that we needed to get red and amber, and it doesn't go in because it's not wrong. So Ramber is my new colour. It bloomin' works. Red, amber, green, because it's unique each time. Then we can go for our flashing amber, and we can teach that as an exception. And just using Ramber solves that problem. They then understand all of the other things, and the questions aren't necessarily relevant to the pedestrian crossings. You can argue that actually each crossing, the type of crossing is important, but sometimes that comes with the practical. Okay, what are we going to be looking out for here? If it's not relevant, who cares? It's very much about making sure they've got that information that is important to them. So, what colour are indicator lights? In this country and on a car, I'll narrow it down because it is really valid. It is the car driving theory test. So we know that bit. But what colour are indicator lights? Yes, definitely. Colour blindness can be, I think we simplify it and we say with traffic lights, all right, it's red at the top, green at the bottom, if that affects them. Yeah. So, yeah, and I think sometimes we undermine that. And we don't think it's the issue that it is, because we've come up with a solution, and that goes for all of this. So yeah. And they don't stand out as much either. So I think that's one of the things. We've got it as red so that you see it. So no, definitely a point.
Would it confuse the matter if it says if you're driving the car, they're green, but if you're outside the car, they're amber?
It would answer my question, because that was what my pupil said. So to say it louder, because I've got a microphone, you haven't. To say that they're green, yeah. So my pupil said they're green. He got really passionate about the fact they were green. And it was because he's only ever put them on inside the car. He's never had them pointed out to him on other cars, and he's really nervous. So his whole world is inside that car, not outside. And he couldn't get his head around why. He was fighting with the answers. And he felt he was fighting with the DVSA, and they hold the solution for him, which is his licence, the pass for the test. So he didn't think he was ever going to get there. And what helped with him, we'll find out whether it passed because he's going to be taking it very soon, but what helped with him was somebody saying, you're right, you're just not there right, so we're going to help so you can figure out that you can. Yeah, please.
Going back to that, all of those lights in the broader context indicate something.
Yeah.
On those?
No,
Oh, sorry, the colours.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the blue light indicates an emergency.
So yes, and I think that goes down to that core level of things. And even with the amber light, you've got two types. Yeah. So flashing amber, we often say pelican crossing, pedestrian crossing light. But you've got skips have flashing amber lights on them. Slow-moving vehicles, they mean something very specific, which is proceed if safe. So if someone's indicating and it's safe to go past them, you can proceed if safe. But then comes in an exception because we're going past them on the wrong side. And that's not an exception that's covered in the theory test. Because it actually says if someone's turning, don't go past them, keep back, let them get on with their thing. And we all know that actually, you come to the practical test, it could be a fail, not making progress. So having those definitions, it goes back to what I was saying about definitions of everything. Don't be scared of saying, right, you tell me what this word means and let's get it written down, because that's where the issues are on a written test. And it really comes down to that. But yeah, the blue, green, amber, red. I'm trying to think if there's any other colours that are particularly important. But they also then feed into the motorway and the studs.
Just white studs.
Oh, white studs as well, yes. And the rest of the screen, I've got them all covered.
Smart.
I'm getting good at thinking on my feet. Lots of work with people who are autistic and awesome, and having to try and figure out, not assuming that it's wrong, just assuming it's not my version, and trying to figure out why very quickly. Otherwise, I look so stupid because I'm not seeing it that way, and rapidly lose credibility. But I don't get it right every time. So, my next question. I'm getting worried because I thought no one would get any of these, and you're doing really well. So you're driving in busy traffic, you want to pull up after a junction. on the left. When should you signal? As you're passing or just after the junction, just before you reach the junction, well before you reach the junction, it would be better not to signal at all. This is a DVSA question from the revision data bank. And it's one that everybody struggles with. It's just trying to convert that into the image in your head of what the junction looks like. The same with the roundabout ones. I tried to include one of those, but I didn't understand it every time I read it because they're really confusing of when you're going to apply the indicator, when you haven't got it in front of you. And I think as instructors, we often get spoilt with having it. We can, let's go and have a look at it. Google Maps is my friend. So, yeah, it depends. And I don't know. I know the DVSA's answer, but I don't know which one I've got. It depends if you're pulling up at A or B.
If you're pulling up at B, wouldn't you indicate as you would to leave the second exit of the roundabout as you're passing exit?
Yeah. And, potentially, you could turn in without indicating and then apply the indicator. That might be the better way to do it. So that situational issue doesn't work. And say, if we go back to that, it's not necessarily black and white. And it should be, I'd argue. All we need is a diagram that says you're pulling up here, and then we've solved it. That picture in their head that they've got to create. Now, if they're lucky enough to get an OLM, and so many people are undiagnosed with various different issues that would qualify them, but therefore they haven't got the relevant bit of paper. And those that have got the relevant bit of paper have to then work through a process which is really challenging, and I spend more time than I would like having to try and help them do so. They get a diagram and they get it explained. And if they're then explaining their answer, they get nudged in the right direction as well, if they've got a good OLM. And I have to say I've had some really good experiences of them. There was a situation, just if anyone deals with PDIs, where a PDI had qualified for an OLM for help with the Part 1, but then the DVSA got in touch and said, oh no, we thought it was an L test. You can have the OLM for the L test, but you can't for the Part 1. She said, my autism isn't any different depending which test I take, and she got the help and they bent over backwards. So, the help is available. I think often instructors get left out of that there's assumptions made. Again, welcome to phone me. Much better to phone disability driving instructors and get help from there.
Thank you very much. Could you go back one slide?
Of course I can.
That is such a horrible, horrible question.
Yeah, it's
for
awful.
Many reasons. And if you look at it, it is so poorly worded in
Yes.
terms of if you're trying to comprehend the paragraph, then you try to comprehend all the answers. By the time you've got to the end of that, you might give the right answer to the wrong question.
Yes.
It's
Because you end up in a knot. Yeah.
And if you're nervous, if you've got autism, you are not going to process that information and get the right answer.
No.
Like you would sit.
I struggle. Especially if I'm having one of those days when I'm not good at taking on written information.
Yeah.
I get to questions like that, and it is, just give me a second, let me double check that I'm giving you the right answer.
Yeah.
Because it's got the full stops, they help, but you've got to translate what that says. And now you're testing my memory as to, yes, it was on there. This is another one. You're turning right at a crossroads. An oncoming driver is also turning right. What's the advantage of turning behind the oncoming vehicle? Now, we're not allowed to add things to the question, so we know there are not other oncoming vehicles, but that only works if you've had a one-to-one Zoom with me and I've told you that that's one of my rules, because that's not written anywhere else. But you can't add stuff to questions, which really helps, say, anyone who's got experience, so particularly Part 1 test, because we have a habit of going, oh, but if there's a motorbike. So you're not allowed to add anything to it, so there is just the car. But the car is also turning right. It's going the same way. If they struggle with lefts and rights, that's not going to help. OLM will get them a lovely diagram of this is what's happening. But the rest of the world have to get on and try and figure it out from that. And that is not easy. So just trying to figure it out. I also am not quite sure that I've got any junctions where I'm based that work that way. That the majority of crossroads, I'd see that they were turning, I'd hold back and let that other car go. So it's only bigger marked out junctions that it will work, and if it's marked out, why do I need to know? Because I'm going to follow the markings. And exceptions, there's plenty. I'm not sure what the rule is. The DVSA's rule is about going behind. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure I agree. I think I'm qualified to not agree. I'm not sure about that either. I definitely don't like it. And it's that also turning right that really throws people. And it's just badly written. And why can't we have a diagram that just shows what they mean? Would be a lovely solution. Unfortunately, we're not there. So my top rules of doing it: pick the safest answer, know the words, know what they mean, look for the full stops, do not add anything to the questions, and look for pairs. I'm trying to think if there's another one. No, there wasn't. There wasn't, I got rid of it. There we go. And look for pairs. So pairs being, if you've got high gear, low gear, we don't have middle gears, so it's going to be one of those two. You can eliminate the other two, probably without even looking, but always good to check, because it might be in the wording. So looking for those pairs, and again, anyone that joins Annie on TikTok will see her waving around some pairs, which she kindly accredits to me, which I said wasn't a very good idea to be waving your pair around on TikTok. So she's a braver person than I am. So if you want to see her waving those, tune into Theory Test Practice. While you're on there, follow Theory Test Explained. I'm going to start when I finally get brave enough. Stupid standing here with a camera there, but when I finally get brave enough to do the TikTok lives, talking to nobody, then I'm happy to do so. So those are, say, the Theory Test Pro. They did have an affiliate code and things, but they haven't got it at the moment. That's the only way that you can get 10% off at the moment. So
we've been using Theory Test for over years. We found it trouble to get the pupils to actually use it.
that's one of the biggest things, isn't
My
it?
son, he's failed the Theory Test 3 times. I think he's dyslexic.
Yes.
He's not diagnosed as that.
Yeah.
The school he hasn't read it in school and stuff.
Yeah.
He's not dyslexic.
No.
Read it,
No. Not struggling enough yet.
Yeah.
is always the way. Everyone struggles at something. I haven't got any formal diagnosis of anything. In the last week, I have been, I'll say accused. We laughed about it, but it felt like I was being accused of being dyslexic and autistic. I potentially could be both. I don't know. I've never been tested. I'll happily join either clan if they'll have me. So, I think a lot of instructors are. Driving instructors, are very often people who haven't fitted in elsewhere, and that could be a reason why. So ask for help, get help, and then we can give that help to other people, which is great. So that page is up on the website. The link for Annie's one, I'm just waiting on Alan to give that to me, and I'll pop that on there as well, so you can find it. And I say I've got some codes, so anyone here today can come and grab one of those codes off of me if you want it. And if you recommend the James May app to your pupils, you get £1. You have to claim it off of them, but every little helps, as Tesco says. So yeah, any questions? Where are we at? We've got 5 minutes. I'm happy to debate anything. So yeah, anyone having any pupils with issues or?
All of them just failing by one.
Just it's understanding.
How about
It's
the people fail by 2?
yes,
3?
yeah.
3 last time, but 2.
My margin on that, anything from 32 to 42, is about understanding more comprehension than understanding. So yeah, if they're getting 32 to 42, and that's where the sticking point is, I can in one session very often give them the tools they need to break that point. And I'm, anyone who wants to give me a buzz, I'm not keeping them a secret. I've only got so many hours in the week, and there's a lot of people needing help. So happy to support people, and happy to set up a register on the website. And I know disability driving instructors. John sends me loads of work, so happy to send that elsewhere as well if we know people are able to help. So yeah.
I've got one I'll be sending to you.
Lovely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
7.
Yeah.
She
Is-
is on the register, so
Yeah.
she's autistic. So
It's getting that help is
Yeah.
such a challenge.
Yeah.
So yeah. But no, well, thank you for listening. I hope it's helped, and I'm around. I've got some cards. If you want to grab one, please do. And yeah, we'll hopefully make the world a bit of a better place for the theory test. Cheers.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
TotalDrive is an award-winning driving instructor app for independents, multi-schools, pupils and parents. The app includes a powerful diary, free lesson reminders, progress records, reflective logs and more. TotalDrive is proven to help instructors earn more, work smarter and improve pupil pass rates. If you're a driving instructor, you need to try TotalDrive by starting your completely free 30-day trial at www.totaldrive.co.uk. TotalDrive is an award-winning driving instructor app for independents, multi-schools, pupils and parents. The app includes a powerful diary, free lesson reminders, progress records, reflective logs and more. TotalDrive is proven to help instructors earn more, work smarter and improve pupil pass rates. If you're a driving instructor, you need to try TotalDrive by starting your completely free 30-day trial at www.totaldrive.co.uk. TotalDrive is an award-winning driving instructor app for independents, multi-schools, pupils and parents. The app includes a powerful diary, free lesson reminders, progress records, reflective logs and more. TotalDrive is proven to help instructors earn more, work smarter and improve pupil pass rates. If you're a driving instructor, you need to try TotalDrive by starting your completely free 30-day trial at www.totaldrive.co.uk. TotalDrive is an award-winning driving instructor app for independents, multi-schools, pupils and parents. The app includes a powerful diary, free lesson reminders, progress